5 years ago, I walked out of my childhood home in Cedar Falls, Iowa, with nothing but a backpack and bruises. I was 15. My name is Lena, and this is the story of how my brother helped our parents hurt me and how I finally got away. Now he's calling me in tears, saying I'm the only family he has left. But when I think about family, I think about kneeling on uncooked rice in the middle of the night because I forgot to mention a pop quiz. I think about waking up to the sound of drawers being yanked open, my mother ransacking my room while I pretended to sleep, praying she wouldn't find anything. In our house, privacy was a sin. If my mother found a crumpled note or a candy wrapper I hadn't shown her, she'd drag me out of bed and force me to kneel on rice until morning. The sharp grains would dig into my skin, leaving bloody indentations that took days to fade. Sometimes they scabbed over. My father made the rules. He decided how long the punishments lasted, whether we could close the bathroom door, even what kind of clothes we wore. He said it was so he could see the work he'd done. The veins in his forehead bulged when he screamed. His breath always smelled like the cheap aftershave he slapped on after shaving, so strong it made me nauseous. He liked to yell up close. I hated them, both of them. But what I didn't expect, what I'll never forget, is how much I came to hate my brother, Isaac. Isaac was born 2 years before me. He was always obedient, always clean, always compliant. And he didn't just follow the rules. He enforced them. His room was spotless. His clothes were folded military style. His desk was perfectly organized. He never tried to hide anything, because he didn't have to. He was their perfect child, their enforcer. If he saw a text on my phone that looked suspicious, he'd run to my parents and report me. He'd stand off to the side with a smirk while my father punished me, watching with open satisfaction. Sometimes, Isaac would volunteer confessions at dinner like it was a competition. I got frustrated with my chemistry homework today and thought about giving up, he'd say solemnly, as if admitting a federal crime. Our parents praised him for being honest and accountable. And slowly, his leash loosened. He got more freedom, a later curfew, less surveillance. Meanwhile, things got worse for me. If I didn't give a full breakdown of my day within 5 minutes of walking in the door, I got punished. If I paused too long or hesitated, my father would unbuckle his belt in a slow, terrifying ritual I learned to dread. I used to wince in pain just sitting in class the next day. When teachers asked why I looked uncomfortable, I'd lie. Soccer practice, I'd say. Tripped on the stairs. But Isaac wasn't content with letting my parents punish me. They eventually gave him permission to search my room too. He took to it with disturbing enthusiasm, flipping through my notebooks, sniffing my backpack, yanking drawers open in the middle of the night. I caught him smirking while tossing out a small folded note I'd written to myself. "You didn't tell them about this," he said smugly. It didn't even matter if I had a secret. Sometimes he'd just lie. "There was a letter in her desk," he'd say casually. And suddenly I'd be locked out of my room, shivering on the sticky leather couch with a thin blanket, trying not to cry loud enough to be heard. It didn't matter how hard I tried to be good. I got straight A's. I scrubbed the house until my hands were raw. I cooked dinner, followed recipes exactly, and made sure not to mess up. But none of it mattered if I didn't confess. My parents didn't just want obedience, they wanted access. To every thought, every feeling, every inch of my mind. When I ran out of real confessions, I made things up. I thought about cheating on a test. I told a white lie about cleaning my room. It made them happy. Or at least, it made them stop. But the one thing I still had, the only thing, were the little notes I wrote to myself. Stay strong. They can't break you. Remember who you are. I hid them in cracks in the wall, behind light switches, in the lining of my mattress. Writing those notes felt like breathing after drowning. Until Isaac found one. He didn't even read it. He just saw me slipping the folded paper behind my desk drawer and immediately ran to my parents. His footsteps down the hallway felt like a countdown. My mother screamed that they were done. My father got the belt. My flip phone was smashed against the wall. They didn't let me eat for 3 days. After that, they followed me around the house. Every step, every move. They made me confess 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. Isaac was always there, smirking. And when I accidentally hesitated during one of those forced confessions, he called me a liar. That single word did what 3 years of beatings couldn't. It broke me. That night, I decided to leave. I walked into school the next morning and, for the first time in my life, told a teacher the truth. I didn't whisper. I didn't soften it. I told her everything. When I was a kid, I thought the monsters were under my bed. I was wrong. They were down the hallway, and one of them had my face. Isaac wasn't just our parents' favorite. He was their weapon. He followed every rule like scripture, reported every minor infraction like he was earning medals for it, and smiled while he did it. Not because he was afraid, because he enjoyed it. At night, he would knock 3 times on the wall between our rooms. Not a signal, not a game, just a reminder. I'm watching. If I so much as whispered to myself or unwrapped a piece of candy too loudly, I'd hear him shift in bed, and I knew what came next. Within minutes, our mother would be at my door, standing in the hallway with her arms crossed, shadow stretching into my room like a blade. I'd be dragged from bed and forced to kneel on uncooked rice in the kitchen. The longer I cried, the longer I knelt. By morning, my knees were raw and bleeding, tiny indentations etched deep into the skin. Sometimes she'd yell while I cried. Other times, she'd just watch. Calm, cold. Either way, Isaac would always be there. Watching, listening, waiting to do it all again. Privacy wasn't just discouraged, it was criminal. Secrets are what bad children keep, Mom would say as she rummaged through our belongings. She once found a half-finished math worksheet in my backpack that I hadn't shown her yet. That night, I knelt on rice for 6 hours. I learned to hide things in layers. Notes from friends, drawings, candy wrappers, anything that felt like mine. I'd whisper to myself in the bathroom mirror just to hear thoughts that belonged to me. I was building a life inside my own head, because that was the only place they couldn't reach. But Isaac changed everything when our parents started letting him search my room. He made a show of it, opening drawers, flipping my mattress, rifling through my backpack like he was on a SWAT team. And if he didn't find anything, he'd invent it. She had a note hidden in her sock drawer, he'd say, holding up a blank slip of paper. And they'd believe him. Every single time. My father, Marcus, was the executioner. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He just loosened his belt slowly, deliberately. The sound of leather sliding through the loops made my stomach turn. The sharp, wet snap of it striking my back echoed in my ears for days. At dinner, Isaac would confess nonsense to earn praise. I almost gave up on my homework today, he'd announce solemnly, like a priest at confession. And they'd beam at him. Meanwhile, I sat there in silence, the welts on my legs throbbing with every movement, afraid to shift too much in my seat in case they noticed, and started again. I tried to be perfect. Straight A's. Cleaned the whole house every weekend. Cooked dinner exactly to the recipe. But it didn't matter. Unless I recited every moment of my day and shared every thought in my head, I was considered defiant. A threat. Eventually, they gave up speaking to me at all. They'd sit at the dinner table, Isaac included, chatting and laughing while I ate alone at the kitchen counter just a few feet away. Same food, same room, but not the same family. The silence was a punishment in itself. I'd chew in isolation, listening to the clink of their forks, pretending the cold counter didn't feel like stone beneath my arms. The night I broke was the night I made the mistake of trusting Isaac. I was desperate, every part of me bruised and exhausted, and I caught him alone in the hallway after midnight. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on your ears. I whispered, "I can't do this anymore." For a moment, I thought I saw something in his eyes, something like guilt, or pity, or maybe just curiosity. But within the hour, Dad had me face down on the living room floor, beating me with the belt again. I bit into a pillow to stop myself from screaming. It tasted like dust and old tears. That was the moment everything changed. I'd always believed Isaac obeyed them out of fear. But I was wrong. He believed in them. He believed in the punishments, the rules, the power. And I was just the casualty that proved how righteous he was. After that, I stopped journaling, deleted every text, hid every trace of myself. But the human mind isn't built to disappear. So I found tiny ways to hold on. I started writing little affirmations on scraps of paper. Stay strong. You exist. They can't own you. I'd hide them in the lining of my mattress, tape them under drawers. Little lifelines. Little prayers. And of course, he found one. He burst into the living room with it in his hand, smirking like he'd caught a terrorist. Within minutes, I wasn't allowed food. My phone was shattered against the wall. And for the next 3 days, I was followed from room to room. No privacy, not even to cry. They forced me to confess every morning, afternoon, and night, made up sins for their approval. Isaac stood nearby like a silent judge, nodding every time I made up a lie to appease them. The final straw was small. He called me a liar. Again. One word. That was it. And something in me snapped, like a glass that had been cracking for years and finally gave in to the pressure. The next morning, I walked into school, looked my homeroom teacher in the eye, and told her everything. The classroom was quiet except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights. I stood by Miss Patel's desk, my hands trembling. After everything, after the rice, the belt, the endless surveillance, I was about to break the unspoken rule of our house. Never talk. I need help, I whispered. Her expression shifted instantly, her pen frozen midair. Are you hurt? I nodded, and that tiny motion felt like betrayal. But I couldn't carry it alone anymore. The words spilled out slowly, then rushed like floodwater breaching a dam. I told her about the kneeling, the belt, the food deprivation, about the confessions, the smashed phone, and how my brother, Isaac, watched it all like an enforcer. I expected disbelief. What I got was silence, and then action. Miss Patel called the school counselor. Within an hour, Child Protective Services had been notified. When my parents arrived, the performance began. My mother's voice was syrupy sweet, her face contorted in a mask of worry. She reached for me, but I recoiled, instinctively flinching. That one movement told Miss Patel everything she needed to know. My father entered next, controlled, composed. Hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed. He always knew how to play the concerned parent. Isaac followed close behind, face carefully neutral, but I saw it, the flicker of panic. He knew the mask might not work this time. Miss Patel laid out the concerns with professional calm. Your daughter reported incidents of physical punishment, surveillance, and neglect. My mother's smile vanished. That's ridiculous, she snapped. She's a troubled child. We love our kids. We'd never hurt her. I said nothing. I simply lifted my pant leg and showed them the raw indentations still healing on my knees. My father tried to intervene. Kids fall down. She's clumsy. I haven't eaten in 3 days, I interrupted. Because I wrote a note to myself. The room fell silent. 20 minutes later, Marissa Wilson from CPS walked in. Calm. Authoritative. The air changed the moment she entered. She asked to speak with me alone. I followed her, barely breathing. In a smaller office, I showed her everything. The bruises on my back from the belt, the scabs on my knees, the silence I was forced to live in. I told her about Isaac's betrayals, the searches, the isolation. And she listened. She didn't question my sanity. She didn't look away. She believed me. When we returned, my parents had recovered their act. But their eyes were sharp with rage. Miss Wilson informed them I would not be returning home that night. They exploded. My mother burst into loud, performative sobs. My father shouted that they were taking me home, that this ends now. But Officer Torres, who had come with CPS, stepped forward. Sir, please lower your voice. You need to cooperate. I watched my father freeze, the vein in his forehead pulsing, his hands clenched at his sides. Isaac stood by the wall, arms crossed, face tight with fury. When my mother turned to him for backup, he stepped forward with a lie on his lips. We had dinner together just last night, he said, voice steady. Mom made lasagna. It was too perfect, too rehearsed. Miss Wilson didn't flinch. She calmly stated that I'd be placed in emergency foster care for the time being. That night, I arrived at the Jacksons' home. A quiet house with a soft-spoken couple who gave me a room with a door that locked. Mrs. Jackson placed a hand gently on my shoulder. This is your space, she said. No one will enter without your permission. I locked the door and collapsed on the bed, sobbing into the pillow until sleep took me. The next few days were a blur of interviews, doctor visits, and paperwork. CPS searched the house. They found the rice, half-used, spilled in the back of the pantry. They found the belt, creased and worn from frequent use. Neighbors admitted they'd heard screaming, but didn't want to get involved. The silence of complicity echoed louder than any scream ever could. Isaac didn't stop. He followed my friends at school, told them I was mentally ill, unstable, attention-seeking. Notes appeared in my locker. They cry themselves to sleep because of you. Liar. His handwriting. Always his handwriting. I told Miss Wilson. The school reviewed footage, but he was too careful. They couldn't catch him. One day, walking home, a silver sedan slowed beside me. My mother's voice called from the window, tearful and soft. Please come home. We miss you so much. Isaac leaned forward. You're tearing this family apart. Is that what you want? I didn't answer. I ran. Straight home, to the Jacksons. That night, I changed my phone number. But the messages kept coming. Unknown numbers. Social media accounts. You're destroying your family. Mom cries because of you. We'll get you back. Miss Wilson filed a restraining order. It helped, on paper. But paper can't stop eyes from watching, cars from idling outside, or notes from being slipped into lockers. Weeks passed. Then, news came. My parents had completed their court-mandated parenting classes and therapy. They were petitioning for supervised visitation. My blood ran cold. I don't want to see them, I told Miss Wilson, barely above a whisper. You don't have to, she said. The court made it clear. Only if you want to. But the voice in my head was relentless. You're being selfish. They're still your family. Dr. Rivera told me. You don't owe your abusers anything. Not even forgiveness. Healing is your journey. Then Isaac broke the restraining order. He showed up at school, sat across from me in the library, smiled. You look awful, he said casually. House is peaceful without you. I grabbed my books and stood to leave. You'll never convince them forever, he added. Eventually, everyone sees who you really are. A librarian noticed. She approached. He backed off, pretending concern. Just checking in on my sister, he said, voice sweet. You know, family stuff. I reported him immediately. Security footage confirmed he'd entered without signing in. The school added new security measures. He wouldn't get near me again. But his words stuck. At night, his voice echoed in my head. We'll get you back. This is just temporary. Dr. Rivera helped me unpack the fear. They're escalating because they're losing control, she explained. Your freedom threatens the system they built. It made sense. But knowing didn't make the fear go away. One day at dinner, I finally asked the question I'd been dreading. What happens when I turn 18? Mrs. Jackson put her fork down. You absolutely do not have to go back, she said, voice steady. Mr. Jackson added, if you want, you can stay with us, through college or longer. This is your home. I stared at them. You want me to stay? Mrs. Jackson reached for my hand. You're part of this family now. The word family hit like a tidal wave. For so long, it meant fear, pain, lies. Now it meant safety. I wasn't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, I never would be again. Every day felt like walking through a hall of fractured mirrors, beautiful yet broken, reflecting every crack of my past. But with the Jacksons, each mirror began to mend, edges smoothing, reflections growing clearer. I sat at the kitchen table, working through geometry homework. Math, unlike the chaos at home, made sense. Numbers didn't judge me. Numbers didn't hurt me. Mrs. Jackson quietly washed dishes beside me, her presence warm and steady. For the first time, someone watched me with kindness, not suspicion. My phone buzzed. They'll make you come back soon. The message was anonymous, yet every word felt like a noose. I pressed my lips together. Fear whispered, you're not free yet. But this time, I recognized it. And I named it. I was choosing not to succumb. That week, I met with Dr. Rivera in her comforting office. I told her I felt fragile, like the last thread holding me together. She nodded. You're learning to hold yourself. Not because you're strong, but because surviving taught you how to. Therapy blurred the edges between guilt, hope, fear, and determination. I started writing. I slept without panic. I began to plan. School offered help, too. A counselor guided me through scholarship applications I'd long ignored, believing I didn't deserve them. But now, I did. Then came the court hearing. I sat before Judge Winters, trembling, supported by Mrs. Jackson's calm hand at my back. My parents and Isaac sat opposite, their expressions rehearsed and tight. Isaac pleaded, accusing me of tearing the family apart. But I had allies who knew the truth. Miss Wilson, Dr. Rivera, and Judge Winters listened. When the judge denied the petition and extended my placement for 6 more months, alongside mandatory therapy, I nearly floated. Outside the courtroom, I noticed my parents' faces, shocked. Isaac seemed unsettled. For once, we weren't all mine, he realized. Weeks slid into months. I learned to walk the hallways as me, not the scared girl who shrank from every gaze. Isaac's words still echoed. Eventually, everyone will see who you really are. I smiled inwardly. This time, They were seeing me survive. Turning 18 passed without fanfare. No drama, just quiet strength. Mrs. Jackson reminded me I had a choice: stay or move on. I chose to stay, because staying meant safety. Because extended foster care isn't just a safety net, it's a launching pad. In many places, including ours, foster youth can remain in care until age 21 if they're in school, working, or training, a lifeline during a critical transition. This is not speculation. It's supported by law and research. DCYF, WA, Gov, +7, JLC, org, +7, ECF, org, +7, MN, Gov, +3, CDSS, CA Gov, +3, for others, CALM, +3. Programs like this, called extended foster care, help youth build independent lives while still having support, a vital reality that saved me. CDSS, CA Gov, +4, YLC, org, +4, for others, CALM, +4. Now, I'm 17 going on 18, and adulthood that once terrified me now feels possible. That night, in the Jacksons' living room, Mrs. Jackson lit candles. I watched the flames flicker, knowing neither noise nor darkness could reach me here. "What do you want next?" she asked gently. I breathed deep. "To learn how to live," I said. For real. When the judge's gavel fell and confirmed that I wouldn't be sent back, that my parents' petition was denied, everything shifted inside me. The courtroom sound dimmed. My body felt weightless. I wasn't just surviving, I was safe. Mrs. Jackson, sitting behind me, gave my hand a quiet squeeze. I exhaled. I was finally home. In the weeks that followed, healing became my daily practice. Nightmares came, but I learned to speak them in therapy, to face them instead of fleeing. School began to feel livable. I joined a writing club where no one asked about my past. I tackled scholarship applications that I previously believed weren't meant for someone like me. Therapy with Dr. Rivera helped me separate guilt from strength, fear from resilience. I realized I wasn't made for breaking. I was made for rising. Then came the hardest test, encountering Isaac again. He parked across from the Jacksons' home after school, every day, never stepping across the line, but always there. A silent reminder that control could come in the mere threat of presence. So I faced him. One cool afternoon, I walked past. He opened his mouth, maybe to taunt me, maybe to beg, but I kept walking, head held high. His presence no longer owned my fear. My freedom did. 6 months later, I turned 18. In Ukraine, placement under guardianship or care typically ends at age 18. However, patronage, temporary family care during crises, can extend from 3 to 6 months, and during martial law, lasts until 1 month after it's lifted. Children's Legal Center. CALM. DID. Gov UA. +1. When my 18th birthday arrived, CPS reviewed my placement. Because I had stable school attendance and a supportive environment, I qualified to remain with the Jacksons while I finished school, an exception, not the norm, in Ukrainian practice. That letter from the court didn't just confirm my placement, it affirmed my future. I wasn't being abandoned at adulthood. I was being supported through it. Now, sitting in the Jacksons' living room, I watched the candlelight dance on the wall. My pen hovered above a fresh page, blank, promising. Mrs. Jackson looked at me, eyes full of calm possibility. "What do you want now?" she asked. I looked out the window, so many dreams in the quiet evening. With space to breathe, I said, "To learn how to live." For real. She smiled. And for the first time in forever, family felt like freedom, not rules.